That's going to be where a lot of the difference is made up. So we're just going to have to wait and see.
Can you draw any conclusions yet about the effect the president may or may not have had on some of these races in his campaigning in this last week or so?
Well, I think there's no question his serious campaigning made a difference. If you look at Senator Kennedy, if you look at Senator Robb, the president made very intensive efforts there. He was out to California several times, and it looks like Senator Feinstein is going to win in California. It looks like we think Senator Wofford can win in Pennsylvania, where the president campaigned an awful lot. And Wynia in Minnesota, as I said, could also pull it out. The president went there twice in just the last week. I would also point out, through the exit polling tonight, it turns out that this really was, in the end, a message about Washington and Congress. 3/4 of the voters who came out of the polls tonight said that this was really about Washington and Congress, not about President Clinton.
All right, George Stephanopoulos at the White House, we thank you for talking with us. We may be talking to you again. Now to Senator Edward Kennedy in Massachusetts, the winner in that Senate race. His wife, Victoria Reggie Kennedy, is at his side. This is a very happy group of people. A lot of Kennedys standing there behind the 32-year incumbent.
First elected 1962.
Just a few minutes ago. Thanks a lot. That's all right. That's all right. Thank you very much.
Proportions if the Republicans get control of both houses, because that has not happened since, what, the 1950s?
Well, you turn everything upside down in Washington if that happens.
We'll be back with more on this getting even more interesting election night after these messages. Continues. If what appears to be happening really happens, Republicans take over the Senate, Republicans also numerically take over the House. This now a very, well, I want to use precision language here, this is a working probability as of this moment. Now that's scary enough to make the Democrats' fingernails sweat. And Connie Chung, who are the people who deserted the Democratic Party tonight? We have a situation in which the Republicans could march into Washington in January in control of both the Senate and the House, and have all of the big governorships, and pick up tremendous congressional support in the South.
Well, we have a clue through our exit polling. When President Clinton went out and campaigned these past 2 weeks, he tried to convince the elderly voters that a Republican victory would threaten their Social Security and Medicare benefits. Did that work? According to our polling, 46% of seniors said they voted Democratic, but 54% of seniors said they voted Republican, so they apparently did not believe President Clinton. Dan, the elderly are a dependable group of voters during midterm elections. In fact, today, 1 out of 3 voters today was a senior. They were dependable to President Clinton in 1992. They voted in solid block for him, but they are not dependable tonight for the Democrats.
Thanks, Connie. Let's go to Washington and hear from United States Senator Phil Gramm. Senator, thanks for being with us tonight. Obviously a big night for the Republicans. First of all, you've been talking to people on the phone. Have you won the governorship of Texas? You think it's fair to say you've won that governorship?
Yeah, Dan, I think we have won that governorship. We're also going to pick up a fairly substantial number of House seats. We also are convinced that we've won a Republican majority in the Senate. We think we've had a referendum on the Clinton program tonight. We think the American people have spoken very clearly. They've also given Republicans the ball, and now we've got to be very certain that we don't fumble the ball.
Now, voters and politicians are against a lot. That much is clear. What legislation are you for, Senator Gramm, that you believe that you can get through with a Republican-controlled Senate and House if it turns out to be that?
Well, Dan, thank you for asking me that question, because I've had plenty of opportunity to say no in the last 2 years. We're going to say no. We're going to say yes to begin with to a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. If your projections hold up, we're going to pass it, send it to the states. We're going to pass a real crime bill that grabs violent criminals by the throat, that builds more prisons, that stops building them like Holiday Inns and makes prisoners work. We're going to pass a real welfare reform bill that asks the 40 million people who are riding in the wagon to get out of the wagon and help the rest of us pull it. We're going to pass a health care bill that doesn't try to reinvent the health care system in the image of the post office, but that tries to build on the strengths of the system that has produced quality, that has produced the finest medical care in the country. So I think we have an agenda. I think the American people have rejected government tonight. They've asked for more freedom, And I think now the burden is on Republicans. Can we give them a coherent program? I believe the answer is yes. I'm committed to doing that.
Senator Gramm, if Republicans control the Senate, do you think that Senator Bob Dole should pull out as Senate Majority Leader, which he could become if he intends to be a candidate in 1996?
I think, Dan, that's something he's got to decide. I think you can understand that of all people in the Senate, I'm probably not the one to be giving Bob Dole advice on that.
Now, since you ramrodded the Republican Senate Campaign Committee, does what happened tonight put you in the lead position for the hunt for the Republican nomination in 1996?
Well, obviously, I think there are 2 points. Number one, winning makes you a winner. And tonight, I did lead the effort to win the Senate back. I'm very proud of it. I had a lot of good help. We had great candidates. The American people were ready for change. But secondly, Dan, the American people tonight said they wanted less government. They said they wanted more freedom. That's a song that I've been singing in the Senate. When I stood up and said no to a government takeover of health care, when the 4 major Republican pollsters said it was political suicide, I think the American people liked the idea of getting something for nothing from the government on health care, but once they understood the program, once they understood it took away their freedom, they rejected it. So if the American people are really ready to have less government and more freedom, then I think if anybody has stood up for fiscal responsibility and limited government, it's me. And if that's the message, I think it helps.
Thank you very much, Senator Phil Gramm of Texas, live from Washington, sounding very much like a 1996 Republican presidential candidate. A lot of tight Senate races out there. Let's hit these chips with another dash of salsa. Ed Bradley.
Dan, I'm going to actually take a look at some of the governor's races. We've got tight races in a number of states, still here in New York. If we take a look at the national map, we've been able to call 19 races. Republicans have won 15, Democrats just 4. That represents a pickup of 6 state houses for the Republicans. Looking at some individual states, it's still too close to call in New York. Pataki ahead of Cuomo, 48 to 46%. But I'm told that there are a number of votes still not in New York City, where Cuomo runs strong, and also on areas of Long Island. Looking at the state of Texas, Ann Richards, apparently at this point, 43% of the precincts reporting doing poorly against George Bush. And in Florida, where there is another Bush running, he is losing to Governor Lawton Chiles with almost 70% of the precincts, and now 51 to 49%. And in Alabama, where we've got another tight race, 56% of the precincts just about dead even. Tight races in Georgia, Arizona, and Maryland. We'll be keeping an eye on all of them for you.
Thanks, Ed. And we'll be back with more CBS News coverage coming up right away.
It appears to have forfeited his opportunity to bring together the Perot voters into a great new FDR coalition. Republicans have been given the opportunity to do that, but it is by no means a guaranteed thing. The Republican Party is itself divided internally over a variety of issues, with the exception of taxes and big government, where we're all agreed. And I think the working out of this will determine whether the Republican Party's about to begin another 25-year era of domination, such as was begun in the 1966 off-year election.
What are you going to do about that to help your party? Are you going to run in '96?
I haven't made any decision on that. My guess is there's a lot more people out on the track as of about 11 o'clock tonight, Bernie, than there were before. You're going to have, I think, 6 or 8 candidates. There's no clear front runner. I think Ross Perot is a very probable third-party candidate. This is very much up in the air as far as the presidential thing is concerned. And you haven't heard the last, incidentally, from former Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North out in Virginia. He has the best mailing list in America. He's got a nationwide following. A lot's going to happen as a consequence of this election, and not simply the crisis in the Democratic Party.
Pat, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
I want you to think about this question, not as a partisan Republican, but just as an American citizen who, like I, loves this country. 2 years ago, the American voters gave Bill Clinton a mandate for change. He went to Washington. He sought to create change. He had internal problems with his staff. He had external problems. There were questions about his personality, his character, etc. But I don't think anybody can question but that this man and his staff sought what was best for the United States. Tonight, it is clear voters coast to coast in this great country have said, we want a change. Now, Republicans had had voted this Democrat to be a virtually, or described him as a monster, my question essentially is this. Where did he go wrong? What did he do so wrong that was against the American body politic, considering that he loves this country as much as you and I do?
Bill Clinton, first, is no monster. Secondly, I thought he took a tremendous beating when we were up in New Hampshire together. I thought his political skills were greater than he exhibited. I think where he went wrong, Bernie, and I don't understand it, he should have known, or it seemed to me he realized in New Hampshire, that the American people wanted to move in a direction toward traditionalism and social issues and traditionalism and moral values, and they did not want big government activism, the insider deals for tax increases,